So, let's do this. I'll ask some, well, right now we'll just go through the first few sections, but then we'll ask a few questions. Some of them will be, softballs, and some of them might be take a little bit more thought. But what were some of the events, significant things that happened in the first 8 chapters, which we have here? The first fill in the blank is the church in Jerusalem. That's the focus of the first 8 chapters of the book of Acts, the church in Jerusalem. So there were some pretty big events that happened in those first 8 chapters. And if you can name anything, we'll try to cross some of these off the list to help us remember. Pentecost. Yeah, big one. Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit fell on the apostles, as Jesus predicted would happen.
You get the example of how the first church went about, what they did when they met together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We see some early examples of this young church, and we saw some examples of the unity and also the generosity, right? Remember that, how people were selling their land and bringing it to the church for various needs. Then we also saw some people who were a little devious in that manner as well, with Ananias and Sapphira. Yep, that's good. I'm checking them off my list. All right, what else? What else can you guys remember? You can look back as well. Even in the first chapter, what do we see with Jesus?
Jesus ascended. We came to Paul?
When he came to Paul, that was in.
Is that not in?
That's in. Well,
That's
we're going to get to that.
chapters? Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus went up to heaven in front of everybody.
Yep. The ascension of Jesus. Very good. And he commissioned the apostles as well, right? And that's the first chapter where he ascended. We saw, go ahead.
Judas was replaced.
Judas was replaced. Boom! Man, that was one I think people would say. Good job. Birthday Alicia. It's got it going on.
Are you still just looking at the first chapter, or are you going up?
1 through 8, right?
1 through 8, yeah.
Stephen was martyred?
Stephen, yeah, we had the story of Stephen and the faithful man that he was, as Luke describes him, and how he was the first martyr, at least in this book.
The gospel was preached to the Gentiles for the first time.
We have, that is,
Peter?
with, all right, Grace here, that's not on the list, remind me here.
Maybe later in the book. Peter went to Cornelius.
Oh, that's a hair later,
Oh,
but that is a significant one, you're right, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
Ahead of herself.
what's that?
I said she's getting a little ahead
Yeah.
of herself.
In a minute or two, that's going to be the right answer.
Oh, well, hold on to it, Gracie.
How far are we going in this section?
To 8.
Till chapter 8. So,
The lame beggar was healed.
yeah, that was a big story, right? With the healing of the lame man and kind of the consequences there. Absolutely. We saw the apostles experience a little persecution, right? And how they were arrested.
I got one for you. We
Hit me
see
with it.
Holy Spirit teleportation of Philip. Something my brother was
Right.
just telling me about this today. He's like, so check this out. Acts 8.
Acts 8.
Holy
Well,
Spirit
that's-
teleportation.
That's after Acts 8. This is their Acts 8 1a. So it doesn't count. Jeremy, sorry.
Oh, I
Get a
thought it
big-
was 1 through
get a
8.
big
My
X for
mistake,
that
sorry.
one.
It says 8, See,
chose the
Shed's
first
right there.
deacons.
Oh, he said
It was the first deacons, right? So what was that in response to?
They thought the Greek widows weren't getting their fair share of
Yeah.
when they were sharing out food.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was, I know it's a fairly quick story, but that was very crucial because there was a very defining moment in the life of the church because the elders and the apostles, they had to make a distinction between what they were going to do, their roles in the ministry. And so instead of them just trying to have their hands in everything and be spread pretty thin, they appointed deacons to take care of some of the more practical matters that were at hand with those widows. So that was a very crucial time. They devoted themselves to the preaching of the word. Choosing the 7 deacons and the rest of the apostles. All right, that's all I got on my list. That's pretty comprehensive. That gives us a good reminder of what the first 8 chapters were about.
Quick question, hi, yeah. So you keep saying like chapter 1A or 1B, what is all that 1A and 1B stuff?
Oh, so it's just verse 1 of chapter 1 through chapter 8 verse 1a. And so sometimes we'll say like 1a or 1b referring to like the first half of the verse or the second half of the verse. Sometimes we'll just do something like that. So this is like chapter 8 verse 1 and it's like the first half of that verse.
So A just means first half, B means second half?
Yep, that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, that's a good question. Good question.
Hey, Ross?
Yep.
What about the birth of Moses? In Acts 7,
The birth of Moses in Acts 7.
verse 20. At this time Moses was born, and he was beautiful to God. He was nurtured for 3 months in his father's home.
I think that's
At
it.
that
That's-
time, it's a quote. That's in his,
Stephen's teaching.
in Stephen's
Yeah,
teaching.
that's when,
Going back and giving the history.
Yeah, he's working through the Old Testament as he's preaching there. Yeah,
Stephen speaks to the Sanhedrin.
yeah, his defense.
All right.
Yeah, but very significant in the life of Israel, absolutely, for sure. All right, so let's go on here to the second section that Dennis Gardner recognizes. He says that this is the church in Judea and Samaria. So in Judea and Samaria, and that's through chapter 8, verse 1b, that latter half of the verse, through chapter 12, verse 25. So you can probably see a theme here, right, already, and how, remember in Jesus and his commission, what we read in Matthew chapter 28, and then also what we've seen here in Acts chapter 1 is when he's commissioning the apostles to go out to Judea, or to Jerusalem, and then Judea and Samaria, right? And then that last one, which is the last section, is 1C, but you can fill that in for yourselves before we get there if you want. But that's the order that this book is following, and as it reflects once again in what Jesus commissioned, which is very, it's so neat, talking about how it's centralized in Jerusalem and then it started to spread out the gospel.
Ross, hey.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I'll start saying your name with my hand, but I'm trying to find where in Acts, like what chapter, what verse, along with what you're reading,
Mhm.
so I can go on. I have no idea where to look, because if I go to Acts 13,
Uh-huh.
1 through 8, and then it says 28, 31, I don't know where I'm supposed to be going. So like with this Judea, Samaria one, 8, 1b, 12, 25, where exactly am I supposed to be? in
So
chapters?
so that section starts almost at the beginning of chapter 8.
So
so the
that's
one-
Acts 8, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Acts 8. And so you might have a little header there that says something like, the church persecuted and scattered, and then it's followed by another header on verse 4, Philip and Samaria, things like that. And so this section, it's really just a way that
When it says
it helps us just kind of order the book. It
Right,
helps
but
us.
when it says Acts 8, 12, and then 25, am I looking at chapter 8, verse 12?
No.
It's just chapter 8, verse 1 through, so all of that, all the way through chapter 12, verse 25.
You're gonna be looking like, here's Act 8, you know, that's where,
But like, is this verse 12 or verse 25?
yes, so you're gonna go all the way through to verse 12, or chapter 12.
Okay, so that's
See,
chapter 12.
this is your chapter.
Right.
Number 1 is your chapter, and then this is
The
your
verse.
verse. And then it's, you know, through 8, which is chapter 8, verse 1A. So this is chapter 8, verse 1B through chapter 12, verse.
Okay, are you picking it up? Yeah. I
Got
picked
it.
up. Yeah, sorry, that was.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia, appreciate that. And then, so what are some significant events, things that happened in this section here? Church in Judea and Samaria.
Saul was converted to Paul.
Saul, that's right, the conversion of Saul of Tarsus. Bingo.
It's one of my favorite stories.
Was that what you had said, Gracie?
No, I talked about how, you know, the
Oh.
part where Peter's on top of the house and
Right.
he's praying and he gets that vision.
I didn't see
Yes.
Gracie's.
Which is right now, that happens in Acts, was it 10? 10? Yeah, Acts 10, the first Gentile conversions. Incredibly significant. And then we saw in there what we called, if you remember, kind of the Gentile Pentecost, where the Holy Spirit had fallen on Cornelius and his family, and they were acting in very similar ways to the apostles in Acts chapter 2. So it's Luke was intentionally paralleling those stories, just to affirm that the gospel was indeed for Gentiles as well as Jews.
Yeah, there you go.
There was also a eunuch that Philip ministered to.
Yeah.
Ministry of Philip, yep,
Yep.
absolutely.
Then the Holy Spirit teleported him.
Right, there you go.
Because it just says he was
Yeah.
caught up.
He was.
He got harpazoed. Right? That's what it means, right? Caught up.
Okay, you got it. That's right.
Zing. That's a bazinga moment.
Could you imagine? Where'd he go?
Yeah, but really, I mean, that's what the brother was saying. He's like, you know, think about that. He was just, he was there. He baptized this eunuch, and the eunuch looked up, and he's gone. You know?
Yeah.
Did the Holy Spirit teleport him somewhere else?
I would think I was having delusions. I really would.
That really just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were just here, right?
That's-
That'd be something to see.
Yeah. Or Moses.
Imagine what Philip felt like.
Well, hopefully there were a few other people around that said, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
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 Well, there was somebody driving a chariot, so.
What do we see at the beginning of this section that kind of might have led to some of the extension of the message of the gospel?
Saul ravaged the church.
Yeah,
Now you're taking it.
yeah. I mean,
I took
even
it
that's
from him.
true. I mean, what about even just the first few verses of Acts chapter 8?
Well, they got spread out because it started with stoning Stephen
Mhm.
and then persecution from there. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, take this lesson. God tells you to go out and to do this and you don't do it. Something might happen to make people go out and do this.
Yeah.
Is there is the importance of being honest about what you're giving in this section too?
That was in with the story of Acts chapter 5 and with Ananias and Sapphira, yeah. But yeah, there was the persecution in Jerusalem, and so these Jews were spread out into the surrounding areas, into Judea and Samaria. And so we see that here in at the start, this persecution and the dispersion of the church. We have Paul's ministry in western, or Peter's ministry, sorry, in western Judea. We have, I'm just helping us along here, the Christians at Antioch, right? So the Christians, they were first called Christians at Antioch in Acts chapter 11. And then we also have in Acts chapter 12, Peter's miraculous escape from prison, and just the persecution of the church by Herod Agrippa I. So he was a bad guy. And he paid for it.
I'm sorry.
Good.
Where are you reading that from? The prison and all that? What
That's-
you just read, where is that?
That is in Acts chapter 12. Yeah, sorry, with this review, we're just kind of skimming the surface really, and just trying to help us remember what we've studied so far.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just
No,
trying to,
yeah.
I was just trying to jump with you and I
Yeah,
didn't know where you
absolutely.
were jumping to.
No, that's good. Appreciate that. Yep, alrighty, and so the last little section here, 1C, the church in the ends of the earth. Church in the ends of the earth, and that spans from chapter 13, verse 1, all the way through the end of the book in chapter 28, verse 31, which is the last verse. I'm correct in saying so. No, it's, yeah. So obviously we haven't gotten past Acts chapter 24, which is where we ended the last time that we met. But what were some of the significant things, few things there that we learned about?
Saul's name changed to Paul.
That's just, wasn't a name change like Peter's.
Yeah.
It was more in one language, it's Saul, in the other
Right.
language it's Paul.
Well,
So it's
we
been
just started recognizing them.
As he
Yeah.
as he was engaging more with the Gentile crowd, and specifically the Roman crowd, he was just more referred to as Paul, which was his Roman name, or
But
part of it at least.
we learned that Paul went through a lot
Yeah.
so far. He has been through a lot.
Yes. Yeah. He has had quite the ordeal.
Yeah.
In our
And
past
he's
few
still-
chapters, we've studied how he went to the visit the temple and then was arrested, and so we've just been going through that whole story of his arrest and
Yeah.
trials that he's faced, his defenses that he's given, and the different accusations that are brought against him, untenable, and he's really been through it.
Is this the section that really starts to deal with, the planting of the churches and the different?
Yeah, it's the first. Yeah, here in this last section, it's kind of amazing how condensed it is. But we have the first, the second, and the third missionary journeys. So we have the establishment of all these churches around the Mediterranean Sea, right? And then we have Paul returning to some of these places, and the emphasis is less on the evangelizing of those places and more on discipling the churches that have already been established, and helping those believers grow and mature in their faith. And so we have all of those here in this last section.